I have been living with my mother-in-law for some time now, ever since my husband and I decided to take her in after my father-in-law passed away. She had trouble moving around due to her bad knees, and we wanted to make sure she was comfortable. To accommodate her, we even designed a special room in our new house with a small bathroom, kitchen, and toilet on the ground floor, ensuring she could live easily without climbing stairs. It was a financial stretch, but we did it out of care and love. Despite our efforts, she never seemed to truly appreciate what we had done for her. At first, things were fine, and I treated her with kindness, making sure she had everything she needed. However, over time, she started becoming distant and eventually outright rude to me, especially when my husband was away on business trips. One morning, after my husband had left for yet another work trip, I was preparing for my day when my mother-in-law suddenly called out to me from downstairs. Her voice was loud and urgent, making me think something was wrong. I rushed down, worried, only to find her sitting comfortably in the living room watching TV. Without even looking at me, she demanded that I make her breakfast immediately. This request surprised me because she had always prepared her own meals. My husband and I both work full-time jobs, and she had never expected me to cook for her before. Concerned that she might be feeling unwell, I suggested taking her to the doctor. She dismissed my concern, saying she was perfectly fine. Instead, she went on about how in other households, daughters-in-law cook elaborate meals every morning and how she expected the same treatment. She mentioned a family she admired, where the wife stayed home and cooked 3 meals a day for her in-laws. I tried to explain that our situation was different. I worked, just like my husband, and it wasn't practical for me to prepare full meals 3 times a day, but she simply turned up the volume on the television, ignoring me completely. That evening, I came home from work and decided to cook lasagna, a dish I knew she liked. I hoped it might lighten the mood between us. Instead, she took one bite, claimed it was too salty, and threw the entire meal away. This became a pattern. She criticized everything I did, no matter how much effort I put into making her comfortable. It felt like nothing I did was ever good enough. A friend of mine, after hearing about my experiences, suggested that my mother-in-law's behavior might actually be a form of bullying. This thought troubled me, so I started researching online and found countless stories of women dealing with difficult and overbearing mothers-in-law. Determined to improve our relationship, I took a day off work and sat down with her for a heart-to-heart conversation. I asked her directly why she was treating me so differently, why she seemed to resent me. At first, she brushed off my questions, but after some persistence, she admitted that she envied the family she had mentioned earlier. She admired their large home, their social gatherings, and how their daughter-in-law took care of her in-laws full-time. It became clear to me that her resentment was not necessarily personal. She was comparing our situation to what she perceived as an ideal family dynamic. She wanted a life that wasn't ours to give. Understanding this didn't necessarily solve the problem. Her expectations remained unrealistic, and her behavior toward me didn't improve. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. As I left for work, I noticed neighbors giving me strange looks. At first, I thought maybe there was something wrong with my clothes or makeup. But when I returned home, a neighbor approached me. She told me that rumors had started spreading that I was mistreating my mother-in-law. According to the gossip, I had yelled at her and told her to leave the house. I was shocked. I had never done anything of the sort, but once a rumor takes hold, it's hard to erase it. No matter how much I tried to explain, people had already formed their opinions. It felt like I was being painted as a villain in my own home. 6 days after my husband had left for his business trip, I decided to confront my mother-in-law again. I told her I could sense her growing dislike toward me and that I didn't understand why. I tried to remind her that we were family, that we should find a way to get along, but her response was harsher than I could have imagined. She looked me straight in the eyes and admitted she never liked me. She criticized everything about me, my career, my values, even our decision not to have children. She called me selfish for prioritizing my job and accused me of not being a real wife because I didn't devote myself to household duties like other women. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had been the primary provider for our home. I was the one who ensured that we lived comfortably, even paying for the down payment and mortgage. Meanwhile, my husband, though hardworking, earned less than me, and his income was mostly saved for our future. My mother-in-law received an allowance from him, but it was ultimately funded by me. Yet, she dismissed all of that as unimportant. She only saw me as an obstacle in her life. someone who didn't fit her idea of the perfect daughter-in-law. And then, she made her final demand. She wanted me to leave. She suggested that my husband might even prefer a divorce if I didn't go. At that moment, I realized that no matter what I did, I would never be good enough in her eyes. Arguing with her would lead nowhere. She had made up her mind about me long ago. So, I made my decision. I went upstairs, packed my essentials, and prepared to leave. As I walked out the door, I caught sight of her smug smile, as if she had won some unspoken battle. Despite everything I had done, driving her around, keeping her company, respecting our decision not to have children, she still resented me. Her demands had become unreasonable, and her words had gone beyond mere complaints. They were meant to push me out. With a mixture of sadness, anger, and relief, I left. I didn't know exactly where I would go or what I would do next, but one thing was clear: I was done trying to earn the approval of someone who never wanted to give it, and maybe, just maybe, that was the best thing I could do for myself. The cafe was a small, independent business that I managed on my own, with the help of a couple of part-time student workers. It was located in an old, historic building, which not only housed the cafe itself but also had extra space for storage and a small office. This setup turned out to be more than just a workplace. It became a temporary refuge for me. Living there allowed me to eliminate my daily commute and gave me a place to stay when I needed it the most. I didn't plan for this change, but circumstances forced me into it. Leaving my home meant I was no longer responsible for cooking meals for my mother-in-law, which gave me extra time to focus on my business. Since I was passionate about my work, the idea of dedicating more hours to it felt like a blessing. Determined to make the most of my situation, I cleared out my office, pushed aside stacks of cardboard boxes, and set up a cozy sleeping area with a blanket. I also organized a small table and chairs to help me maintain a functional workspace. When the student workers arrived for their shifts, they noticed the changes right away. After I explained my situation, they were quick to offer their support. Their kindness and willingness to help made me appreciate them even more. They had always been great employees, providing excellent customer service, which was often praised in our cafe's reviews. Seeing their dedication, I even considered giving them a pay raise as a token of appreciation. That evening, I received an unexpected message from my husband. He had returned from his business trip earlier than planned and was surprised to find many of my belongings missing. At first, my mother-in-law refused to tell him what had happened, but after about an hour, she finally admitted that I had moved out. My husband immediately tried calling me multiple times, but he did not show up at my workplace. I realized that, despite everything, he was respecting my need for space. Feeling guilty for making him worry, I finally decided to return his call. When we spoke, he was eager to understand what had gone wrong. Although I hesitated at first, his persistence convinced me to share my struggles with his mother. He was shocked and angry when he heard about the way she had treated me. He wanted to discuss everything in detail, so we agreed to meet after I finished closing up the cafe for the night. At around 9 p.m., I arrived at the house, feeling anxious about facing my husband. The only lights on were on the first floor, and as I tried to unlock the door, I realized my key no longer worked. My husband opened the door for me, and inside, I saw my mother-in-law sitting with a stern expression. She had changed the locks while I was gone, something my husband had not noticed because the door had been unlocked when he arrived earlier. My husband was determined to get to the bottom of everything. I told him about the past 3 weeks, how his mother had mistreated me, spread false rumors, and refused to listen to me. Every time I tried to defend myself, she called me a liar. When my husband asked for her side of the story, she suddenly fell silent. Then, she accused me of being aggressive, even suggesting that the neighbors could back up her claims. The conversation felt like it was going in circles until I decided to present proof. Over time, I had recorded audio and video clips of my mother-in-law's harsh words and unreasonable demands. This included footage of her insulting me and criticizing my inability to have children. When my husband saw and heard the recordings, his anger grew. My mother-in-law weakly tried to argue that the clips were taken out of context, but since my husband had experience with video editing, he could tell that they were genuine. At that moment, he realized the full extent of what I had endured. My husband then started considering the possibility of us living separately from his mother. When he suggested this, she strongly objected. However, he stood firm, marking a significant turning point in our relationship. We had many deep discussions in the following days, ultimately reaching a decision we had previously avoided. moving my mother-in-law into a nursing home. Initially, we had thought that living together was the best option, but with her mobility issues and our demanding jobs, we couldn't provide the level of care she needed. My husband, who rarely showed his emotions openly, had been thinking about this solution for a while. Though he usually tried to keep the peace, he chose to prioritize my well-being, which showed how much he truly cared for me. When we told my mother-in-law about our decision, she was devastated. She had always been against the idea of living in a facility, and she pleaded with us to reconsider. However, we knew that this was the best option for everyone. My husband did not waver, and for the first time, his mother realized that he was putting me first. Though she eventually apologized for her behavior, the damage was done, and my husband did not change his mind. During this stressful time, I focused on expanding my cafe's operations. I introduced a breakfast menu and started serving alcohol in the evenings. To my surprise, these changes led to a significant increase in customers. Ironically, I found myself sarcastically thanking my mother-in-law for pushing me into this situation, which had ultimately helped my business grow. However, she was not amused, responding with a stiff expression and pursed lips. Eventually, we found a high-quality senior living facility for her. Though it was expensive, it provided excellent care and services. We made this choice with her best interests in mind, ensuring that she would be well cared for in a comfortable environment. Meanwhile, my life was changing in an even bigger way. My husband's job required him to travel abroad frequently, and this led us to move to France. At first, I was hesitant, as I was deeply committed to my cafe, but when 3 of my student workers graduated, I realized that this was an opportunity to explore new possibilities. I made the difficult decision to close the cafe and embark on a new adventure. Adjusting to life in France was challenging, especially due to the language barrier. Initially, I spent most of my time at home, struggling to communicate. However, I slowly integrated into the community and made new friends, one of whom helped me find a job at a grocery store. As my language skills improved, I regained my confidence and eventually pursued my dream of opening a small cafe in our new town. Back in Vancouver, we still owned a house, but rumors had started circulating in our old neighborhood. To avoid further drama, we decided to sell the house and use the money to fund my new business. It felt like a fresh start, allowing me to create something meaningful in our new home. Then, something completely unexpected happened. I found out that I was pregnant. Doctors had previously told me that conceiving naturally would be difficult, so this news came as a miraculous surprise. My husband and I were overjoyed, eagerly looking forward to welcoming our child. The local community embraced us warmly, celebrating our news with genuine excitement. Their support reassured us that we had made the right decision to settle here, and we felt confident about raising our family in this new, welcoming environment.